Hello guys, welcome back to the channel Mastering Docker 2025 from developer to production. So in the previous video we have seen how we can spin up a Hello World container using Docker. Now in today's video we will see how we can spin up a standard NGINX container where we will be rendering our first static web page. In this video, you will understand how to create a Dockerfile, what is the structure of Dockerfile, and what are the commands we'll be using to spin up a container, and also we'll go through some basic commands that is necessary when we are working on containers. So let's get started with spinning up our first NGINX container. Now, let me open Visual Studio Code. Here, I'll click on Open, and I have a directory called as Docker which I've already created. I'll just click on Open. Then enlarge the screen. Now here I'll create a new folder called as NGINX. I'll hit enter. Now as I told in the previous video, if I want to containerize a particular application, I need to give a file called as Dockerfile as an input to the Docker daemon. So first let me create a file called as Dockerfile. So here in this folder I'll just click on new file and I'll name the file as Dockerfile. So this is a special type of file which doesn't have any extension. When I just mention as Dockerfile, you can see the logo being updated. I'll just hit on enter. Okay, now let's start writing our first Dockerfile. As I told in my previous videos, I mentioned that to spin up a container, I need to have an image. So image is basically used to run a container. Now, for spinning a standard NGINX container, so I'll be using a standard NGINX image from the Docker Hub. So how can I use the standard NGINX in my container? So now here in my Docker file, I'll write an instruction to fetch or pull a standard NGINX from the Docker Hub. So I'll write from, which is in caps, then I'll go with NGINX latest. Now, what does this line do? This says that from an image NGINX, pull the latest version. So don't worry, I will just show you the documentation soon. Now I'll open the browser and I'll search Docker Hub. And here I'll go. And here I will search NGINX. So here we have the official image. Now, as I told, I am using the latest version. But if I want to use the other versions, how can I use it? So here they have mentioned the different versions. Here we have the Alpine versions, we have Hotel versions. Here we have the different stable and the version specific ones, etc. So based on our usage and based on our runtime environment, based on the version we want to use, we can refer these images and use it in our container applications. So coming back, so what does this instruction do? This will fetch or pull the standard NGINX image, which is of a latest version. Now, I need to specify the port which my container will listen to. So that I can do it by typing expose 80. Now, what does this mean? So this instruction will declare that my Docker container will listen to port 80. Now, one more key thing to remember, I'm not publishing port 80 for that container. So this is just for documentation of container runtime. Now, question comes like, why I'm exposing on port 80? Answer is simple. So port 80 is a standard web server port. That is why we are using it. Now, exposing the container at port 80 or any other port makes it clear to the developer or any other orchestrating tool like Kubernetes how to connect to the container. Now to run NGINX inside my container, I need to run a command which makes the NGINX run inside my container. So how can I do it? So here in the Docker file, I'll write an instruction to do it. So I'll write cmd, which accepts an array of instructions. So here I'll write NGINX and I'll write with -g and daemon off. Now, what does this instruction do? This instruction makes NGINX run in the foreground but not as a background service. And these instructions -g daemon off, this tells the NGINX not to detach from it. This keeps the process running inside the container. Now, why are we doing this? Containers are designed to run as a single main process in the foreground. If NGINX ran as a background service, the container would exit immediately. Running the container in the foreground ensures that the container stays alive. So, to build an image, I will run podman build -t. -t stands for tag. So, the image is being tagged, and I'll give the name of my image as my NGINX, and I will specify where is my Docker file. Now let's try without specifying the location of my Docker file. I'll just hit enter. Now you can see that I have got an error saying that no context directory and no container file specified. So I'll just move into my folder NGINX. Then I'll execute the same command and I'll put as a dot. This dot specifies that the Docker file is present in this directory itself. When I hit enter, you can see it is trying to pull the image from the Docker IO and it is building it. Now you can see that the image has been built successfully and it is successfully tagged saying that localhost my NGINX at latest. Now let's search this built image in our Podman. Search Podman desktop. Yes, then I'll go for images. Now here you can see the image which I built, and it was tagged as localhost my NGINX. Now let's try to use this image to spin up an NGINX container. So I'll come back to my terminal and I will run a command called as podman run, and I'll pass an argument called as -p, which is nothing but a port, and I'll specify which port I'll be accessing my container. So I'll specify as 8080 and I'll map it to my container port. I'm specifying my container saying that I will be accessing through the port 8080 and this port is connected to the container port. So what happens is that when I go to my browser and open localhost 8080, it will automatically map to port 80, which is our container port, and we can access our NGINX page. Now here I'll specify what image I'll be using to spin up my container. So I'll run or type my NGINX, which is my container or which is my image name, and I hit enter. You can see something like this. Now these are the logs from that container. Now I'll go to the browser and here I'll just type localhost 8080. When I hit enter, you can see the standard NGINX page that is welcome to NGINX. And when I come back to my terminal, you can see the request that is being raised. Here we can see all the logs of the container. Now if I come and if I try to refresh here, you can see the request raised for that container. So instead of this NGINX page, I want to render my static HTML page. So how can I do it? So just come back to the VS Code and here I'll just create an index.html file and I will generate the boilerplate, and here I'll mention Docker container, and in the body I'll write a h1 tag where I'll say I'm running inside instead of Docker we'll go with NGINX container. Okay, after creating a static file, we need to mention this file in our Docker file, because when we are building, we need to specify what and all files a container needs to have. So again, coming back to the Docker file, here we'll make a slight modification. We will write an instruction to copy all our files into the NGINX container. So we'll write an instruction name copy, and I'll specify the file name that is index.html into the NGINX folder structure. Now the default web page what we are getting in the NGINX is nothing but the default index.html of NGINX. Now here in this command what we are doing is we are copying our index.html file and replacing the index.html file of the NGINX. So the syntax is the source and the destination part. Now I will just close this. I'll hit clear and I'll run Podman build to build up my image. So command is Podman build. I'll tag it and my image name is NGINX and the Docker file is present in this directory, so I'll mention it as dot and I'll hit enter. So the build is successful. Now I will run the image. So it is running. Now if I come to this browser, if I try to refresh, now you can see instead of showing welcome to NGINX, I'm showing my custom static web page, that is I'm running inside my NGINX container. Now I will show you one more approach how we can do this. So no much difference. Here I can see all the logs in my terminal itself, but as a developer or as a user it will be a bit difficult for me to read all the logs in my terminal itself. So what I'll be doing is I'll be passing a flag to the same command, that is here I'll pass -d. So -d stands for detach. So what this flag do is when I run my container, after content is spinned up, it directly exits from the terminal. So the logs won't come in my terminal. I just hit enter. So you can see the container name, that is the container ID, but you can't see the logs. But if I go back to the browser, if I try to refresh, it's working. Now, again, if I come back to my Podman desktop, if I go for containers, I can see the container running here. I can see the logs field. So same logs are being reflected in the terminal. So that is the two-way how you can execute a container, either having the logs in your terminal or having no logs in your terminal. If you want, you can just manually spin up the container here by running the play button here. But ideally, it's not recommended because we'll be running our containers in the terminal itself. That's it, guys. This is how you can render a static index.html file or a web page in your NGINX container. So in the next video, we'll see how we can render a multi-page static files in your NGINX container. So till then, stay tuned.